Leadership and governance expert Professor Mazwe Majola joins me here in studio to weigh in on the current proceedings at the ANC NEC meeting, as well as recent developments regarding the government of national unity. Professor, great having you with us. Thank you so much for your time. Good afternoon.
And good day to you.
Thank you so much.
Alicia.
So, Prof, look, let's look at the sentiments first of all. What was your general assessment? Let's start with what Helen Zille said pertaining to what exactly we're talking about, which is the structure that is now known as the Government of National Unity.
Look, when the Government of National Unity was mooted or even started, we always said it's not going to be a smooth sailing. Obviously, it's a very difficult animal, very difficult situation, because they've got to balance or deal with the paradox of collaboration and rivalry, the paradox of cooperation and competition. Mm-hmm. So they need what we'll call an amicable competition. Different parties come together, they're in competition, but they must understand that they work together. So they'll always have these, you can't call it a teething problems now, because I think, although maybe still teething because there's a new baby, really, it's a newborn baby of about a month old. Mm-hmm. So it needs an extra care. People like Helen Zille needs to be called to order. And I think John Steenhuisen really need to speak to Helen Zille, because this baby is still new. Still need to be, it's still very delicate and sensitive, and still need to take care of it. So that one is an issue that the DA must handle. But also I think ANC and DA at some stage, maybe they might need to meet and also try to deal with this thing. Because if you don't deal with them now, if you don't arrest them now, it's going to be difficult moving forward, because we are moving, or we are going to 2026, towards 2026, then the environment there will be even more harder than now, because that is when they will be fighting for voting or for voters. And then there, it's when the GNU will be put into test.
But Professor, deal with it how? You've been with me in studio since, of course, the NEC media briefing started. And we heard David Makura went straight into explaining how they were then, put in a situation where they had to look at each other and say what were the best possible options when going into a new government. Is it a coalition? What was the best possible options in terms of ideologies as well as policies? When looking at their partners. So at which point does the other then call the other into order pertaining to how you've generalized or basically blanketed and packaged this whole thing and government structure to people to call it what it is, but your top partner is disagreeing with that notion and saying, no, this is actually in fact a coalition and not a government of national unity?
So in a setup like this, conflict will always, will always emerge.
But to whose advantage is what I'm trying to ascertain, Prof?
Of course, it will affect the population. That is why my point will say, because it seems like they are more focusing on conflict resolution instead of conflict management. Because conflict resolution is when you wait until conflicts happens, then you resolve it. It's about resolving what has happened already.
Reactionary.
But it's a reactionary. But conflict management is prevention. You are checking those areas and those things that might or will damage this relationship, and say, prevent those things and talk about those things before they take place.
It seems that the party, looking at the ANC, which is currently holding its first sitting of the NEC meeting there out in Boksburg, it looks like the party keeps going its own goals even after the elections, Professor. Let's look at how the whole Zizigodwa saga was actually managed by the party, the expulsion of its former president. Does it speak to a party then that seeks to actually renew itself as it is purporting and selling itself to the public?
Look, the ANC is, this renewal, it cannot be a renewal ad infinitum, something that is not really finishing. Obviously, it's a continuation. However, it seems like ANC is failing to self-correct.
Why is it not consistent, Professor?
I think people are not bold enough inside the ANC to call a spade a spade. I'd hoped that in this weekend they will be able to take a stock, as they've said they will do, and have that candid and frank conversation, and have that introspection where they will, as a family, where they will really be honest, self-introspect, and be honest with each other, to the point where they must not be scared of telling each other. If there was any province that failed, if there was any region, if there was any structure, if Women's League or ANC Youth League didn't come to the party, they must say that as it is. However, if they're still, like as I was hearing now, they're still theorizing, being academic, they're not gonna come back. I'm afraid they're not gonna bounce back. They've got to be pragmatic and say what they mean and mean what they say.
Let's talk about the provincial government pertaining to the whole GNU. What are some of the threats that are likely to, of course, be associated with the provincial structures, particularly when you look here in Gauteng? We saw there was that whole delay where, of course, there was no announcement of the provincial cabinet. So do you think that what is happening at the top does have a direct impact into what is happening at provincial level, Prof?
It was supposed to be like that, that at national level, there's this government unit at national level, and then provinces as well. They did very well in KZN. When
Zilla did say that deal took 5 minutes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Obviously, that's how they did it, but at least I think there were no issues there. And Tuli was able to put his executive and then with different parties together, no issues, and I hope it will continue like that. In Gauteng, they struggled to find each other, especially between ANC and DA, as we know that, and then they had to leave DA behind. That is a threat, because even though we know that recently they managed to pass the budgets, even DA or without DA's approval.
Yeah.
But they must not think that it's going to be like that all the time. They cannot trust EFF, they cannot trust MK Party. The fact that they supported them now, it doesn't mean that all the time they will support them.